Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco, and I am here with you today with another amazing Spider-Man art retrospective video. Thank you for joining me. You are here in time for another exciting issue of The Amazing Spider-Man. Today we're going to be looking at issue number 40. This is the second issue drawn by artist John Romita, who at this point is taken over the reins from co-creator Steve Ditko. We have a lot of stuff to look into. The last issue left us on a cliffhanger with the reveal of the Green Goblin's secret identity and the fact that he knows Spider-Man's secret identity. So this is going to be a very interesting addition and conclusion to that story. And so I'm very much looking forward to sharing it with you. I do want to point out a couple things. If you are new here and you are enjoying this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel. This video series comes out every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time, and you want to make sure you subscribe and click the notifications so you don't miss any content. We have a playlist here on the channel. If you're new, you can go all the way back to the Amazing Fantasy number 15, the first appearance of Spider-Man, and we track every issue all the way to today. The other thing to make sure you're checking out and why the subscriptions and notifications are so important is that we have a couple, and we have plans on more in the future, live stream episodes of this series. So two issues ago, number 38, we looked at the last issue drawn by co-creator Steve Ditko, and that was done on a live stream with myself and my friend, super fan and super comic historian Nick Caputo. And then we are already talking to other experts that we're going to be bringing on to the series as well to join us so that we're having these discussions as we review through these issues. So we have a lot of really exciting stuff coming up because we are heading to some very important issues. If you're a fan of Spider-Man, we're talking about some milestone episodes. So make sure you subscribe and again, click the notifications. One more thing before we jump into the issue that I wanted to just explain. It's been a while. So we are almost a full year. If you go week by week, right? When we hit episode number 52, we'll be at 1 year of this series. And it's been a while since I kind of explained myself, who I am and what my credentials are. So I just wanted to go over that very quickly with everybody who may be new to the series. So again, my name's Jerry Rasco, and I am a comic book artist. I have been a comic book artist in the independent comic scene since the early 2000s, working with several small publishers on different projects over the years. I was the regular interior comic book artist on a book for Counterpoint Comics from 2015 to 2021. I've created my own self-written, self-drawn, and self-published comic book as well called M Squad. So I bring knowledge about the process and how comic books are made, especially obviously from an artistic standpoint. I have also written comics, and so I kind of understand that process well in terms of what it takes to make a comic. The other thing that people might not know is that I actually have a Bachelor of Science of Art Education. So my college degree, again, is in art education. And so I'm bringing a lot of that knowledge to this series as well. So when we are talking about things like composition, color balance, perspective, proportions, these are all things that you would learn about and you would work through in any kind of art class as you are learning how to create art, whether it's comic book art, painting, sculpture, film, any kind of visual art. These are all topics and terms that we use. So even if you're not an aspiring comic book artist or an aspiring comic book writer, this series could certainly be helpful to you if you're any kind of aspiring artist, because you can always learn from any kind of example set before us. So anyway, I hope you enjoy. Like I said, I just wanted to cover my credentials one time. It's been a while. So again, thank you so much. We're going to jump into the comic now and take a look at issue 40 of The Amazing Spider-Man. Okay, so here we have the cover of The Amazing Spider-Man. This is phenomenal. I will point out, as we always do in every video, this is a PDF copy. Back in 2004, Marvel Comics was able to get a hold of original issues and actually physically scan them and save those files to, at the time, CD-ROMs. And so it came on a large stack of CD-ROMs because it goes all the way into the, I think, 300 or 400s of the series. So we have a long way to go. But that's what we're looking at. So this comic came out. We'll flip the page and we'll see the indicia. And I don't think we've ever gone over that. I'll go over that very quickly for anybody who's not familiar with comics and what that means. And what information is there. But we'll see exactly when this was published. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's around 1966, but we'll confirm. So you will see what this comic looked like exactly as a copy of 1966 issue. No recolors, no changes in the page layout with advertisements and things like that. This is the original OG straight off the shelf. And it's awesome. I mean, this cover is terrific. This is exactly the kind of thing you want in a cover. You have your hero, you have your villain, and in a way, compared to most covers, they're almost in opposite positions. Usually, your hero is the one who is being threatened by the villain, and we know that that in this issue, our hero is going to overcome the villain, and we need to open it up and find out why. Instead, what we have here is Spider-Man being very menacing over a fallen Green Goblin. And we see that the title is Spidey Saves the Day, and it's the end of the Green Goblin. Excuse me. What does that mean? Is Spidey going to cross a line? Is Spidey going to kill the Green Goblin? Is Spidey going to become a villain himself? I mean, with just the title and the cover, anything's up in the air. I love the composition here. You have the two figures are great. Of course, we've talked a lot about colors and how you have your red and blue primary colored Spider-Man next to your purple and green secondary colored Green Goblin. So they complement and contradict each other, if you will, at the same time. The flame background is terrific. It adds an element of danger, but I also really like the way that if you look here at the top, right around Spidey's head, the flames turn to smoke and the smoke goes to black. And so it's almost like these flames and smoke are pressing up against that title. And of course, you then have your awesome title credit of The Amazing Spider-Man almost being billowed up or supported by that smoke. Terrific composition, large figures. Again, everything you'd want in a cover. This is terrific. So we open up the cover, and as I said, over here on the inside, you have the indicia. This is all the stuff about the copyright, who owns Spider-Man, how it's published, etc. And we see here that this is published monthly, except for November, copyright 1966. So again, this issue did come out in 1966. So again, it gives us some context as to things like terminology, slang, why you don't see cell phones or why you don't see computers and things of that nature, right? So it does change the storytelling to some degree, and we want to be cognizant of that. We have our great splash page. If you're a fan of the series, if you've been following me at all, you know this first page in a comic is called a splash page. It's usually like this, one big image that takes up the entire page. And I love this, where this not only goes right into the story, but it actually sort of recreates from a different angle the last image that we had of the previous comic. So we had a cliffhanger, and now we're starting right into it at that same moment. So think about the way we watch television when you have ongoing series that are what we call serialized, right? So it's not just a 30-minute or 1 hour episode that could fit anywhere. The things that happen in episode 1 affect episode 2, etc. And that's exactly what we have here. So this is what we would see, right? You would turn on the TV and it might give you a last week on Spider-Man, and you would start with this scene. So this is terrific. Of course, we have Peter has been captured and tied up by the Goblin. He has revealed himself to be Norman Osborn, the father of Peter's classmate Harry Osborn. And up till now, Harry Osborn has been nothing but a mean-spirited, like, little rat-faced fink. Is the best way I can put it. But we're going to see some changes. And, of course, that comes from Stan Lee and John Romita. One is just the way that John Romita draws. We've talked about it a little bit in the previous episode. His faces seem to be softer. His character's a little softer. And then the other part was that Steve Ditko was plotting these stories. So he was kind of creating characters on the page with his own idea in mind of what they would be. And then Stan was coming in and filling in a lot of all the dialogue, or a lot of the dialogue. And the two of them didn't always see eye to eye, where here Stan is straight up writing. So anything that's happening from a story perspective, he's writing it. So we're going to see a much more Stan-specific view of what Peter and his supporting cast are going to be. One more thing I want to point out. This was info that I got after our last episode from, again, my friend Nick Caputo. He informed me that the inker, who I wasn't aware of, this name, Mickey DeMeo. Mickey DeMeo is a pseudonym. That is a name that was used by inker, artist, writer Mike Esposito. And Mike Esposito, I've got some notes here. Mike Esposito worked during the Silver Age on a lot of stuff. And you probably, if you're a Silver Age comic fan, you probably know who he is without even knowing it. But he worked on characters or books like Spider-Man, The Flash, Wonder Woman, and Metal Men. So he was a guy that was going back and forth a little bit from Marvel to the DC world and DC to the Marvel world. So when he was working over at DC and came over to do a few issues here of Spider-Man, his name had to be changed. That way he could still go back and work over at DC Comics. So pretty interesting stuff there. Once we get past this, it will be interesting to see how different inkers affect the overall art by John. So John Romita is doing the penciling, and then the inkers come in and finish the work, add a lot of your lighting, rendering, shading, stuff like that. And different inkers have different approaches. So this is one inker. As we go on this series, we'll see how other inkers maybe tackle things a little differently. One last thing on this page that I want to point out, you have this big blurb from our narrator, which of course we always think of as Stan, because I guess really these are Stan's thoughts. He's kind of summing things up, and as the last sentence he adds, "And now, Tiger, you're on your own." And I found it very interesting that Stan called the readers Tiger. We're going to see very soon a very famous character who's introduced who uses the term Tiger a lot. If you know, you know. So let's get into this. So great page here. Norman is clearly insane. We can see he is sweating. These itty bitty pinprick pupils in his eyes help set a very disturbing look. We are used to eyes with deep color, deep blacks inside, and his are so small. There's so much white in the eyes. His eyes appear to be bugging out of his head. That's a great visual way of showing someone's disturbed, right? You say that the eyes are the window to the soul, and if your eyes are huge white blanks, what does that say about what's inside? There's no depth, right? And then, of course, we have this great push in from the camera. So again, we've talked about this many, many times, but for new folks, when I refer to camera, I mean our eyes as a reader. So we are like a camera and we're stationary. In a television or film world, you move the camera around to get the image you want, whether that's a close-up, a faraway shot, an angle, up, down, left, right. We don't move the comic, we move the image inside relative to us as a reader. So what we've done here is we have pushed in on the camera onto Norman's face, just again emphasizing that insanity and psychosis that he's dealing with. Great, again, movement of that camera, like I just said. So we see Norman's face. Now we're cutting away sort of over his shoulder in a way. not quite because we're not seeing the back of his head, but pretty same idea. And now we see Peter and where he's tied up. Now we flip the camera almost 180 degrees. We're looking behind Peter's shoulder and seeing more of Norman and his body language. Now the camera comes in this next panel up above. This is a down shot. We're looking down on everything so we can, again, see both figures at the same time and how they're doing. And you can tell just from Norman's body language, he's all over the place. There's times when he's gesturing wildly. There's times when he's cradling his head in his hands. On the next page, you see him resting, his weight on this workbench. Like everything is the weighing this Green Goblin persona, the psychosis, whatever you want to call it, is weighing down on him. So great body language, great use of camera angles, moving things around to keep us interested as a reader. The other thing, again, if you're a fan of the series here and you follow this for a long time, you will know this. In older comics, the farther back you go, you see more structured grids where every panel is the exact same size. This is a throwback to where comic books began in things like collected editions of newspaper strips. So you'd have your panels would kind of be the same over and over. And now what we're starting to see is John Romita is a generation of artists that are bringing more page composition. Yes, this is still a grid of panels. There's a lot of panels. These 4 panels are the same size. These 3 panels are the same size. But not these 3 are different than those 4. Same over here. His first panel on page 3 is much bigger. Then we start going into memories. He's using different, very subtle, nice border changes to show memories, like their little thought bubbles, the same as your thought bubbles, your memories. And so that helps separate what is happening in real time versus what is happening in a memory. This is kind of like I said, this to me is more of a beginning of what we consider a more modern comics, things that you would see. And of course, we're going to see a lot of changes as we continue to go forward. But in general, we're seeing more variety on the page of panel layout and page composition. Artists are starting to be more artsy, to be honest. It's still a job. Publishing at this time is still a 9-to-5 kind of job, but they're starting to bring a little more artistic expression to it. The memories, just from the story perspective, Norman, this is all pre-Goblin stuff. He is a normal guy. He's just a busy dad. He appears to be a single dad with Harry as his only child, but he's trying to run this big chemical company. He's trying to get rich. He's trying to get powerful. And so while he does nice things for his son, like buy him presents and take him to a ball game, it appears that all Harry wants to do is just talk and spend time with his dad, and his dad never has time for him. So part of this is explaining Norman and where he comes from, but I think also this is a bit of a pivot for Harry, that we're trying to show like maybe Harry was a little bit of a jerk in some of the earlier episodes or earlier issues, and here's the background why. So, Nick and I had a discussion about this previously, but we both agree like there is a very quick softening of the Harry Osborn character. He goes from being a major jerk to being Peter's best friend very, very quickly, and we'll see that down the road. Again, more memories back and forth. Peter's trying to stall for time so that he can get himself out of these steel cables, and Norman continues to tell his origin story, how he now this was again a couple issues back we met this character. This was his former business partner, Professor Wendell Strom. That guy got himself arrested. He embezzled money from the company. He says he meant to borrow it, but the reality is he kind of did steal money, and he was sent to jail for it. It just happened to open opportunity for Norman, and Norman wasn't about to cut him some slack and go, no, I understand. And, he pressed charges. So he's now looking at all of Professor Strom's new formulas and calculations and begins working on it. He doesn't even know what it's going to do, but he puts it together and he gets this green bubbly stuff, and he doesn't know what it's supposed to be for, what the results are supposed to be, but he just goes for it. And boom, this is awesome. This explosion is right up there with your Bruce Banner being hit by the gamma bomb kind of explosion. I love this line work. It is fantastic. Very, very good, where you have the lines just forming this outline of a person enough that you can see the hint through this green light. The clothes are tearing. The hands are just sort of held in space as his head is thrown back. The color is terrific. The green and yellow, and then some light green in there. The angle, so everything is moving from left to right. Artists, if you are working in a medium like comics, because we read left to right in the Western world, that psychologically means motion to us. So if you want to see something moving fast, if you want to show energy going somewhere, you show it from left to right. And that's exactly what we have here in this image. This is a terrific panel, and I really appreciate the fact that it's large to emphasize how important it is. So as Norman is recovering, of course, they say he has brain damage, but in his own mind, he has no brain damage. He's smarter than ever. So obviously, whatever was in him kind of, any negative stuff that was in the guy kind of got amplified through this experiment and this explosion. So he jumps right to the idea of, I'm going to become the Green Goblin, and I'm going to be a costume criminal, and that's my way to become rich and powerful. So he creates the Goblin persona. And again, terrific point here. Boom. We turn the page. Another big panel with an awesome reveal. I like this. We've seen it in the past. There's times when you want to show the first appearance of something. So whether that's that explosion, right? We're here on this page. Oh, if you don't know the story already, we're all pretending that we've never heard this story, seen this story in other media, that we don't know what's going to happen. He's mixing up a formula. It's starting to bubble. It's steaming up. What's going to happen? You turn the page, explosion. If this is on opposite pages where you can see them both at the same time, it takes away the drama. We know it's going to explode. Page turns in a comic are like that, again, cliffhanger moment on television where somebody's about to say something and it cuts to commercial and you go, I was gonna get up. I was gonna go in the days before you could pause television. I was gonna go make some popcorn, but if I miss this, I gotta know what happens when the commercial comes back. So that's what page turns can do for you in a comic. And we have another one right here. This is terrific. Great full body shot of the Goblin. Always a terrific design. I mean, obviously, Steve Ditko was the guy who designed it, and John Romita has stuck very much to that design. He hasn't changed it one bit. The only thing, I'll point it out because we talked about it in the last issue as well, the coloring is different. When we first saw the Green Goblin, the colors, the purples were sort of flipped. What I mean is, right now we're seeing more of a almost red to magenta kind of body costume and gloves, and his satchel with all of his bombs and everything is a darker bluish purple, and his boots are bluish purple. In the original, we saw a darker bodied suit with a magenta sash, and I believe the gloves and boots were darker purple. Or actually were maybe magenta. So the colors have been changed here a little bit. There's a little bit of consistency there that's been missed, but that is what it is. Again, just wanted to point out for anybody that's been following along and is a fan of small details the way I am. Also on this page, this is awesome. So you have the Green Goblin, Norman, and he is pulling this mask on. And the way that he pulls this mask on is unsettling and tells us a lot. So he's pulling it across his face like this, like almost like he's opening it up in the back and putting it on, and we see his eyes are coming through and his teeth are coming through this costume. And the note that I put here that I thought it was really interesting is how different that is from how Peter puts on his mask. So when Spidey puts on his mask, a lot of times we see he's pulling it down over his face. And what I said here in my notes was, the way the Goblin is doing it, it's like this is a reveal. He's revealing the real person, that the Goblin is the real identity, and Norman is now become sort of this alter ego that he uses to get things as the Goblin. But he's sort of revealing, whereas Peter is the person, and he's hiding Peter to become Spider-Man. And it's very subtle, but those kinds of psychological storytelling concepts, how you show the character putting on the mask, can make a huge difference in how we perceive the character, whether we understand we perceive it or not. Subconsciously, you know that someone pulling something that looks like flesh across their face is eerie and disturbing, whereas Peter pulling this other persona over to hide himself is almost protective, like it's a helmet or a face mask. So very different stuff there, and I thought that was really interesting and wanted to make sure to share that with you. We dip into very briefly the sort of side stories, side threads that we have going on here, which is Aunt May is sick. Her doctor says she can't be shocked or she could die. She's, of course, Peter is like all of 10 minutes late probably, or 15 minutes late. So she's like, oh no. But what I wanted to point out here is that we have a slightly older May than we did in the previous issue. The first appearance we have of Aunt May in issue number 39, she looks like she's de-aged about 20 years. Here, we do see a little more of that elderly. Not quite as elderly maybe as Steve Ditko drew her, but definitely older than what we saw in the issue before. So that's a good change. Aunt May needs to be frail for the story, but she definitely wasn't looking at the last episode. Oh, one last thing here, and Peter is talking about, like, what am I going to do? If I get out of this, great. If I don't, he's come to terms with, being Spider-Man, maybe, what kills him eventually. But the things that he mentions here is he'll never be able to see Betty Brant again, and he'll never be able to explain to Aunt May. So not Aunt May first, Betty Brant first. And I'm like, I thought we had just gotten over the Betty Brant thing. Betty had left. Ned had asked her to marry him. She couldn't decide or couldn't whatever, so she just ran away. Ned confronted Peter. He was like, I'm out. He's had 2 or 3 different situations where Peter's like, I'm done. I'm done with Betty. I guess it's not going to work out. I'm moving on. Ned, she's all yours by all means. Don't worry about it. I'm stepping out of the way. But here, his life's on the line. He goes to Betty. Really? And of course, now we come back to here's Betty. And even though she ran away, she's going to come back. Now, here she's thinking about her life, Peter and her boss and Ned and Spider-Man. And, sort of hinting that maybe she subconsciously has some ideas that Peter is Spider-Man. This swinging pose of Spidey, I did not care for it. It is drawn extremely well. The musculature is well. The proportions of the body are good. The pose itself as a swinging pose for any other character is fine. If this is Batman, you put a cape on him. He's swinging through a rope. If this is Daredevil, he's swinging on a rope. No problem. But Spider-Man is supposed to be more acrobatic. Spider-Man is supposed to move more spider-like, I guess is the only way for me to put it. And this looks like a guy hanging on a rope. I mean, this could be a guy in a circus. This could be a real human being who's in good shape swinging on a rope. That's not how Spider-Man should swing. And so I was not impressed with this. This tells me that so far, when it comes to depicting Spider-Man and how his powers work from a physical standpoint, I don't think that John Romita has a grasp on that yet. We'll see if he gets there. This is a beautiful upshot. I mentioned this. This comes straight out of his experience in, the older romance comics, having the girl holding her fingers gently to her face, turning up away from the camera. That's a really hard angle to draw and do it correctly, because it changes the where parts of your face fall in relation to the viewer. So normally with a face, you take an egg shape, roughly some kind of an egg shape, and you go about halfway down are your eyes, and then about halfway between your chin and your eyes is your mouth, and then halfway between your eyes and your mouth is your nose, and halfway between your eyes and the top of your head is your hair. And there's proportion, just general rules. And of course, that's different for every person and every face, so you don't hold fast and strong to them. But the idea here is, your nose falls somewhere around the middle of your face, give or take, a little lower than middle. But when you turn up away, the way that angle is, the length of the nose gets compressed. So the bottom of the nose becomes much closer to underneath the eyes. And then the lips, you have to show more of the bottom of the upper lip and almost under the chin. It's a very difficult angle to draw. And John nails it. I mean, that is picture perfect right there of how to do that. So if, again, aspiring artist that wants to know how do you draw a look up at for a character, there's Betty. And then I made a quick note of this. Doesn't this conductor look like a Barack Obama? Is it just me? But I look and I go, man, that guy looks like Barack Obama. Anyway, so we're continuing. Peter is still stalling for time. The Goblin is now going to. He's already talked about his origin story, so now we're getting a review of all the times Spidey and the Goblin interacted. And he has a machine that he hooks up to his head that will project pictures of their memories. And I'm like, you have a machine that does that, and you're going to become a criminal to become rich and powerful? This machine would make you the wealthiest human being alive. This is the greatest invention that's ever been made. If this was a real thing, anybody can hook up to a machine and relive their memories. So things you forgot, people you forgot, Alzheimer's patients, things like that, you could hook this up and draw their memories out for them to help them remember. I mean, this is crazy. We're talking about crazy. This guy is super crazy. This makes no sense. Last thing on these 2 pages, these are the enforcers. If you remember, these guys go all the way back to Amazing Spider-Man number 14 in this particular issue where the Goblin gets the enforcers to attack Spidey on a film studio. One of the guys is named Ox. He's not super strong. At least he's not described as super strong at this time. Maybe later in life, throughout the years. But I love the way that John draws him, just super massive and super thick. So that if he's not super strong, he'd have to be this kind of size to be able to go up against a guy like Spider-Man who could lift a bus over his head. So very cool. Again, more memories of stuff that we've reviewed. And then boom, we have this big panel down at the bottom where Spidey's gotten loose and the Goblin realizes it. So he just kind of throws the switch and lets him loose. I will say I was a little confused by this. So you'll see later what this means is I thought he was grabbing this handle and like tipping him out. The way that Peter's body, his feet come up in the air and he's turned towards us and his foot is like at the same height as his head almost. So I thought Goblin was like tipping him out of the chair. No, what he's doing is throwing a switch and just releasing the cables. And we'll see how that later. So they're going to fight it out. Spidey's ready to do battle. He's going to get into costume. This panel, I was like, this is a waste. No offense, but you're going to draw Spider-Man preparing for his greatest fight to date, possibly a fight to the death. And the big action moment you show is him pulling on his glove. Why is it not this? Right? The last thing you would have is Peter. So Peter's got his whole costume on. And in order to go from Peter to Spidey, it's this. Not putting on my gloves. Like, come on. That's crazy. So Yeah, missed opportunity there. If you ask me, that's a change that I would make 100%. The two fight, and of course they use all of their tools and gadgets available. The Goblin has bombs and smoke, and Spidey's got his webs, and this is, again, another large panel. One of the things that I do like about this, I'm just going to go real fast, but every couple of pages in here, you go like 1, 2, 3, big panel, 1, big panel, 1, 2, big panel, big panel, big panel. These are key elements of showing important moments, action moments. Not something we always got a chance to see up till now. Again, Steve Ditko had his own storytelling language, and a lot of it was, again, much like you saw down here in these 4 panels, much more grid-like. We didn't necessarily see the one big action shot, or what we would call an anchor shot, which is what's the super important moment of this panel, of this page? What do we want to emphasize that's going to make the reader stop for a minute and just pour their eyes over the visuals you're giving them? So we see more of these with what John is doing. And again, it's a slightly different approach to page composition. Page composition being your strategy for how you put your panels where, and doing it in a way to move the reader's eye through beyond just a structure of telling a story. So bringing in our, bringing creativity to the page composition is something we see more and more and more pushed further and further. And when we get down the road here and you see some 80s into the 90s, we're going to see some real crazy page compositions. So they're battling it out, and then Spidey just punches the Goblin off of his glider. Now, I said this as well. So the punch is so traditional. That was my note that I made. This is the most traditional superhero punch. If you took Spider-Man out and you put in Superman, or you put in Thor, or you put in Iron Man, you couldn't tell the difference. This is just, again, I get it. A superhero punches a villain. There's only so many ways you can draw punching a villain. But Spidey is different. The way he moves is different. He's not muscle bound. His number one power isn't his strength. He is strong, but he's not as strong as the Thing or Thor or a lot of other characters. So being just a full knuckle bruiser that just powers through villains, that's not Spidey. And again, it's just one of those things where I go, I don't know that John, again, is grasping the difference of what makes Spidey different. Spidey could have still been punching the Goblin and had him leaping in midair and doing it in a much more acrobatic way than just feet planted punching like it's a punching bag, like it's a heavy bag. This is really nice body motion here. I do like this, where the Goblin crashes. You feel the crash on that shoulder and the back of his head. You feel the weight. And then him, where he's hanging, his cap is hanging over his arm. The weight on those arms is there. It feels very solid. It feels very, very real. You get that feeling. You know what it feels like to be kneeling down and push yourself up with your arms. You can feel it here. Now, this is where it starts to break down a little. This is a good panel. Great. The Goblin grabs this live wire that's on the floor that Spidey has stepped into a loop, pulls it tight so that it wraps around and kind of gives Spidey a shock. Great drawing. This movement is excellent. Spidey's reaction, where his arms are wide, his legs are twisted. All of this is perfectly fine. Where it falls short for me is in what I have deemed the choreography continuity, something that Steve Ditko was a master of. The Goblin is kneeling down in front of Spider-Man from one moment to the next moment. He mentions they're moving with the deadly speed of a striking boa. I suppose you should have said cobra, but boas strike fast too. Snake. So this is happening in a second. This is immediate. This is a turn. Whoop. So all of his weight is on this elbow and this arm. This is his left arm. This is his right arm. The wire ends up in his right arm. Oh, no, this is his left arm. This is the goblin's left arm. This is the arm that is on the elbow on the floor. So he has managed in this amazing speed to grab this wire, roll all the way over, because now his butt is on the ground instead of his knees. So he's rolled 180 degrees and swung the wire all the way around. It could happen, but wouldn't it have been better if he had turned the other way? The cable is in his right hand, which he could reach the cable with his right hand, and now he's spinning. So instead of his arm coming across, his right hand would have been opening up his body, showing the spin, showing how he would have whipped this cable around. Again, it's small, but when you're somebody like me that I'm studying these and I'm thinking about how would I draw it, the continuity breaks down. It doesn't make sense to show it the way it was. And it's a simple change. So thinking about how, not just I draw this picture, he's down. The next picture, he's whipping this cable at Spider-Man. How did he get from point A to point B? You may not draw it, but you have to think about it, because that affects how you draw image B. So things that really need to be thought about, again, that's great images on their own, but the choreography continuity breaks down for me. Goblin is on the run. This is where I was talking about the chair earlier, where I thought that the Goblin had, knocked Peter out of the chair right here. So I thought he tipped over the chair. However, later, Spidey rips the chair off the floor. He says it had been bolted. And so that's the difference. And then it made me go back and go, oh, I understand what's happening now. That's where, again, just this is a good image. But by turning that angle as much as you do, it makes us feel like he's tipped over. It's not clear because there's he is at a different angle or perspective maybe than Peter. If this is really Peter sitting in the chair and the lever's thrown and it just unlocks it and we're looking down, then we needed to see the floor. And that would tell us we're up above. But the perspective that the Goblin is at, we're flat, which makes it feel like if I'm seeing the top of the chair has to be tipped to me. So again, small details, but it made me stop and have to go back and visually try to figure out what's going on. Again, Goblin on the run. Spidey is pressing. He's got some sort of so the blasts in his glove aren't power enough. He's got a laser beam kind of thing that he's going to shoot, which of course Spidey ducks. Now this is how you use Spidey's powers to strike someone. He flips out of the way of the laser and spins like a ball into the Goblin, kind of knocking him over. That's great. And then leaps in with a kick. Terrific. That's how Spidey's leaping, jumping, agility works. That makes sense to me. If he had just flat foot punched him like, Mike Tyson in his prime, it doesn't work for me. But this is terrific. This is great. The Goblin falls. Now this is where I'm a little sketchy about the dialogue. It looks like he's falling. He tells him he's getting hit by the full effect of the electrochemical charge. He's not being knocked back into live wires and vials of chemicals. So the motion lines make it feel like he's still falling. So what's happening? Has he hit yet? Is he hitting mid-fall? That part's not clear. Great drawing. The dialogue here is where I kind of go, it's like it's a second, the dialogue's a second too late. We're seeing before he hits. Another thing, the chemicals, he talks about the chemicals, these vials of chemicals. All you see is this little hint here, very easy to miss. I went back through again. This is the thing that made me stop and go, oh, here's a little bit of a beaker down behind this dialogue balloon. And then every once in a while you go back, way back, and you go, oh, there's some jars and bottles and stuff back there. Things that aren't memories, there aren't a lot of, here's a couple here. It's not really clear that the goblin's lair is full of chemicals and stuff. It would have been nice to set that up. Maybe show a whole rack of chemicals, a bookshelf full of chemicals, whatever. But just kind of, since it's important to the story that the chemicals and the electricity are going to produce the effect of what's going to happen, sell it more than what we did. So he hits him. There's a lot of smoke, and it turns out it causes him to have amnesia, and he apparently remembers nothing over the past couple of years. He thinks Harry's still in high school, and so Spidey's like, okay, then maybe, right, because the dilemma is, even though I beat the guy, if I don't kill him, he's going to tell everybody I'm Peter Parker, and Aunt May will have a heart attack and die. So what do? Conveniently, amnesia. So now Spidey can do the right thing, change his clothes before he realizes what's happening, burn the costume, get him to help. Very nice down shot. Spidey climbing up the wall. Great. I love it. Anytime you see this is, again, terrific example of how Spidey moves different than other characters. Same thing here. He's hanging on the telephone pole by his fingertips and toes. Excellent. I really like that. The way he bounces off the car roof to the house. Fantastic. That's how Spidey moves. This silhouette of Peter flipping off the roof to come back in through the front door after he's changed. Awesome. That's how Spidey moves. Swinging's okay. But I want to see more of this stuff. And this. So that's awesome. Peter goes home. The doctor is there. Aunt May is going to be okay. He got her, sedated her so she didn't get too upset. But this guy, again, is reading Peter the Riot Act like he's Peter's dad. And you're like, okay, man, listen. What do you want me to do? I got a life. And, of course, he has to come up with an excuse, and he says, oh, I was studying. I didn't understand how late it was. Sorry. Again, but we don't really know how long was he late. I don't think it says exactly. I don't think it's like, oh, Peter's, 5 hours late, or it's the next day and he's not even home yet. He might have been an hour late, and they panic. So calm down. And then, of course, Harry and his dad are starting to rebuild these bridges. He can't remember what happened, but we're sure everything's going to be great. And of course, nice spider web in the background. So that's the issue. We're going to cut back to the desk. We'll sum things up, and we'll wrap up the video. So that was a good one, a long one. Thank you for sticking with me and going through it. We had a lot to cover, but there's a lot of really good stuff there. As I've mentioned at the beginning and throughout the video, if you are an aspiring artist, if you are an aspiring writer, these are things that you should be looking at. Don't always look at your favorite, maybe if this isn't your favorite, or don't just look at one comic or one source. Look at other things, get examples. You can learn a lot of stuff from what came before, even if it is almost 60 years old. There's a lot of things in here that still apply to modern comic storytelling, and there's a lot of great lessons to be learned. I think this is a terrific issue. I liked the continuation from off the cliffhanger to the resolution. I liked what John was doing, John Romita, as far as the figures, the musculature, the anatomy, the storytelling, the page composition was very good. There are a few things that I would, like to see different, but overall, very, very good. I'd say it's a marked improvement, and maybe from the previous issue, and just tells you that he's getting, in 2 months' time, more comfortable with the book, with the characters. So for a rating, I would definitely give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's a very good issue. And I look forward to even more from this team. So there's The Amazing Spider-Man number 40. I hope you enjoyed the video. I had a great time reviewing it. Don't forget, subscribe to the channel, set the notifications button to on, and that way you don't miss any of our future upcoming videos, whether they be recorded or live, as we go through more episodes of The Amazing Spider-Man. Thanks so much.